Hello everyone, EB the Original Master here, and welcome to my SpongeBob SquarePants Season 11 review. So this is actually my second video of doing a season review of SpongeBob SquarePants. So if you guys haven't seen my Season 10 review that I did way back in 2017, I'll drop that link in the description below. So we're not going to waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get started with my Season 11 SpongeBob SquarePants review. Now keep in mind, these are my opinions, and if your opinions do not match with mine, that's completely acceptable, and please do respect others' opinions of this show. So let's begin. Okay, boys, we are kicking off with Cavedwelling Sponge. And the description of this episode is that when a prehistoric sponge is unfrozen, he causes chaos all over town and only SpongeBob can communicate with him. So yeah, this episode was actually quite entertaining in my opinion, and it's a good episode. So I'm going to point out some of my favorite bits of this episode instead of actually going in depth of the whole review. What I like about this episode is that it had some really good visuals and great comedy of Spongy, who is the cave SpongeBob, and it was pretty interesting that SpongeBob actually got framed and got arrested because they thought that Spongy was the real SpongeBob, and we haven't had an episode like that before, where a character gets framed or there's like an impersonator of that character. Well, there is episodes like Imitation Krabs, which was like a Mr. Krabs impersonator, but I wouldn't count that one is because that's more of Plankton disguising himself as Mr. Krabs so he can get the formula. But Spongy in general was a very good character. He was funny, and I do love the ending of this episode where SpongeBob and Spongy were dancing on the jail rooftop. That was quite entertaining. And yeah, so that's my overall opinions on Cavedwelling Sponge. It was a pretty good episode, and it was actually a really good start of Season 11, even though that this episode didn't air first for Season 11, but it counts as the first episode of the season in general. The Clam Whisperer. When a flock of clams descend on Bikini Bottom, SpongeBob has to get them out before they ruin the whole town. So, I didn't mention this in the beginning of this review, is that all these opinions are based off of first impressions. The reason why I do first impressions is because that I do not rewatch these episodes to do these reviews, is because that I am not into the cartoon reviewing community, so I do not rewatch episodes to get myself a different opinion of my original rating for it. So that's why these episodes are getting low of ratings based off of my first impressions. So yeah, the Clam Whisperer was kind of a meh episode when I first saw it, is because that it really wasn't that much going on in my opinion. Yeah, there were some funny things about it, such as SpongeBob showing Patrick the different clams. That was quite interesting. And you got SpongeBob trying to send the flock of clams away from Bikini Bottom. I found that to be pretty funny, especially SpongeBob becoming one of the clams. He kind of looks like a wallet. And now the parts that I really didn't like about this episode was Mr. Krabs basically abusing these clams to get pearls out of them so he can make a profit out of it. And I really don't like Mr. Krabs' behavior where he just becomes greedy, but I understand that's his character, but that's kind of unlikable if you think about it, because why would Mr. Krabs do that to clams? Like, that's kind of messed up. But yeah, overall, this episode was meh. It wasn't anything too special. And if you guys have a different opinion on this, please let me know in the comments. And yeah, so that's my overall thoughts on the Clam Whisperer. Spot returns. When his pet amoeba, Spot, produces offspring, Plankton wants to use them for one of his evil plans. So, Spot Returns is indeed the Season 11 premiere of SpongeBob, airing back on June 24th of 2017, and this episode was actually quite funny, and it was quite good as well. My favorite moments of this episode was SpongeBob teaching the amoeba offsprings how to, be like good dogs and stuff. Yeah, I'm sorry for the weird dialogue. And, one of my favorite bits of this episode was Plankton showing off the offsprings and their different abilities. Like, there's one who's a clown, there's another one who's like a bomb or freaking destruction or whatnot, while there's another offspring where they like make duplicates of each other. There's actually a running gag in this episode where Patrick's like a guard dog and Mr. Krabs takes care of him. That was actually pretty funny. And I also do love the tracks that were used in this episode, such as Spot Returns Unknown Track, Acrobats and Clown A. Just an example of some of the good tracks this episode provided. Overall, this was a fun watch. I really recommend you guys watch Spot Returns. It's actually a really good episode, and it will quite entertain you. The Checkup. Mr. Krabs is too afraid of his medical examination, but if he fails it, the Krusty Krab will get closed. So yes, basically from the description of this episode, SpongeBob and Squidward has to make sure Mr. Krabs takes his medical exam, or else the Krusty Krab will get closed. And there were some really good things going on here, such as Larry the Lobster at the end pretending to be Mr. Krabs. That was very funny. There's actually another good thing about this episode was SpongeBob. He was dressed up as his, I don't know, like a barbershop quartet member, if you see it in the image in the center. And another thing that I really wish this episode could have been if Mr. Krabs was actually more mature and actually did get his checkup in the first place. But that wasn't the case, and this is what we got instead. So overall, the checkup was quite good, and I really do wish that this episode could have had more in it, but it was good for what it was, and I do appreciate that. Spin the Bottle. Plankton poses as a wish-granting genie in his latest scheme to get the secret formula. So, Spin the Bottle had a really, really good concept because we haven't gotten an episode that focused on genies and magic bottles, and this was actually a really good attempt of one. So, before I get any further with the pros, I'm gonna go ahead and point out some of the cons that I really wish this episode could have been. Instead of Plankton using the genie to steal a formula, it could have been really good if he gives SpongeBob wishes, like different wishes, and the wishes then all come true basically. And then later on in the day, the wishes then become curses, and then so SpongeBob has to go back to Plankton and ask him to reverse all of the bad wishes he's done. So that could have been a really good concept, but no, they just used Plankton as a genie just for him to steal the formula, which is a running plot that has been going on since the Plankton episode from season 1. But overall, that's all I have to nitpick about. But some of the highlights of this episode was the spin the bottle part where Patrick says, "And then we kiss," and SpongeBob was like, "No, you'll get the bottle," and then he just pulls out these lipsticks and just puts it over his lips. That was quite funny. And Noggin, yeah, Patrick's little hand friend, Noggin, that was pretty funny as well. But yeah, the concept of a wishing genie is really clever, and I do think this episode was quite good. But again, more potential should have been added, but that's just nitpicks, and that's all I have to say for Spin the Bottle. There's a sponge in my soup. Mr. Krabs' new Krabby Soup is a hit, until some heat-loving hippies move into the soup vat. Oh my gosh, this episode was so boring. Yeah, There's a Sponge in My Soup has a really good concept, but the concept with the hippies really wasn't that interesting in my opinion. So with aside of the bland hippie characters not being funny and the characters being relatively boring, the visuals were actually really good in this episode, like inside of the soup. I actually do love the visuals when SpongeBob goes inside the soup to get the hippies out, and then you just get Patrick just randomly in there. I don't know why, but he was just somehow there. And the little drum circle segment was actually quite funny, especially Mr. Krabs playing the drums so hard it cracks his claws and whatnot. Pretty painful if you ask me. But the concept of the Krabby Soup was not bad at all. It was actually a really good concept, but they could have did something more better with it instead of hippies. Like, why couldn't Mr. Krabs do like a soup delivery run? Like, he asks SpongeBob and Squidward to deliver the soup all around Bikini Bottom. But no, we got something with hippies, which is quite dumb. It could have been used in a different episode, but that wasn't the case here. So overall, this episode was meh. Would have been better if the soup concept was a lot creative instead of with hippies. But that's just my honest opinions on it. And I do wish that this episode could have had a different thing going for it. Man Ray returns. When Man Ray rents Squidward's house for the weekend, it's up to SpongeBob and Patrick to stop his evil vacation. You know what, guys? This was a waste of potential. Like, this episode sounded really interesting, but they've used it for the all wrong ways. So, my biggest issue with this episode is the plot. Why would Man Ray rent Squidward's house for the weekend? Is that really their best way to bring back Man Ray, one of the Mermaid and Barnacle Boy villains? Like, come on now. But I will give them credit that this episode is slightly better than Mermaid Pants. But then again, the fight scenes were just bland and uncreative. Like, really, SpongeBob and Patrick using Squidward's furniture as weapons? Really, my dude? Just no, just no. They could have done something better than that. But I will give them credit. The visuals towards the climax with the rain and stuff was actually quite nice. But again, they could have did something way better than with this. And then the ending was just all over the place. You know, Squidward returns back from his vacation. SpongeBob and Patrick clean up Squidward's house, and then his house just collapses on him, like another Squidward torture ending, and it really wasn't that great. So overall, Mary Returns is just a meh for me. It could have been a lot better if they had a different plot for this, but that's just Nickelodeon being very lazy as usual. And don't worry, there is more good episodes to come here in the season. Larry the floor manager. Mr. Krabs takes a vacation and makes Larry the lobster the temporary manager of the Krusty Krab. Wow, this episode was actually really funny. I actually really loved it. Well, at first, I thought this episode was going to be really boring because of the plot, like, oh, Larry the lobster is becoming the manager, whoop-de-doo. But then it turned out to be an actual fun episode. Bubble Bass. Oh my goodness, this guy is so funny. Like, there's this one scene where Bubble Bass is, like, hurtling over things and just lands on Squidward. And don't forget his second order. Don't forget his order. I'm not gonna flat out repeat it because I don't have it memorized, but it's actually a really good callback to Pickles, because in Pickles, Squidward was taking Bubble Bass's order, and Bubble Bass had that really signature quote, which is his order, of course. And another funny thing that I really liked about this episode was Larry turning the restaurant into a gym. Like, he turned the restaurant into a gym, serving protein shakes and salads. That was quite hilarious. And then freaking SpongeBob grabbing Squidward's butt, I guess. That was pretty funny. Don't worry, it was funny, you guys. It really was hilarious to see that. But overall, this episode is quite the watch. I recommend you guys see this episode, and it's worth your time. So please watch Larry the Floor Manager and form your own opinion, and let me know in the comments below. The Legend of Bikini Bottom. The Flying Dutchman wants to make sure SpongeBob and his friends are scared on Halloween. You know, guys, from the title of this episode and the description, that's my biggest form of criticism of this episode. Okay, don't get me wrong, I really do appreciate Social Novelties returning to do another stop-motion SpongeBob special, but this time it's on Halloween. But alongside of great puppet works, great visuals, great songs, the scare song was really good, but again, this episode just left to being okay. And like I mentioned earlier, my biggest criticism is the title and the plot. Like, it's called The Legend of Bikini Bottom. Like, they could have had a story where it tells the origin of the Flying Dutchman and why he likes to scare people on Halloween. Like, that would have been a lot better. Or they could have had a story where Bikini Bottom is like an alternate version of Bikini Bottom, and it's like horror and Halloween. Why would you call an episode The Legend of Bikini Bottom, but it doesn't mention any of that in the description? Yeah, that's kind of my biggest problem with it, is the title and the description. But it's still okay, though. It isn't anything bad and offensive, but it's just leaving okay. It's because that it could have been better if the description was a little bit better, but I'm not going to ramble about that too much. And yeah, so alongside with the great puppet works, some great jokes, and the great song, which is the scare song, it could have been a lot better if the title lived up to its name. So yeah, sorry guys, this is just my opinion on this episode. If you want SpongeBob SquarePants humor, this is the episode for you. No pictures, please. Patrick leads an enthusiastic stranger on a tour of his favorite places in Bikini Bottom. Wow, this episode was actually really quite the enjoyment. This episode was really funny, had lots of great jokes, great visuals, and good things overall. Patrick and Rube, two great duos. Like, Patrick was a good tour guide. Rube was a funny tourist saying amazing. And the whole title zone sequence was actually quite entertaining. So I don't want to spoil too much here. Go watch this episode now. Go watch it. It's up online on watchcartoonsonline.com. Watch it, form your own opinion. Good episode overall. Good. Stuck on the roof, SpongeBob is afraid to get off the roof of the Krusty Krab, but he won't let that stop from living his life. So, the reason why I gave this episode an okay is because that it's good and all, but it's not anything too special. My favorite moments of Stuck on the Roof has got to be the dance scene at the beginning. That was quite entertaining. And the visuals were absolutely stunning. So I have to say, Stuck on the Roof has lots of visuals going on. It goes from a nice daytime setting, it goes to night, it goes to morning, it goes to rain, there's a rainbow, there's like wind. There's a lot of weather events going on in this episode, which makes it quite entertaining. And this episode also packs some of my favorite moments, such as Patrick's famous quote, "What are you doing way up here?" You got the Krusty Krab in like a tower format. And what else is another funny scene? Oh yeah, Sandy's stupid little robot legs kicking Squidward and causing him to explode. Yay, Squidward torture. Yeah, this episode's just okay. Nothing too great, nothing too spectacular, but it was just okay. Yeah, my opinions, but it still had great visuals and great jokes, but it's just landing out to be okay. Okay, I'm just rambling on too much. Let's move on. Krabby Patty Creature Feature. A new secret Krabby Patty formula has disastrous results for Bikini Bottom, and only SpongeBob can save the day. Guys, do not trust Sandy to be your cook, because this is exactly what happens. Why? Why did Mr. Krabs hire Sandy to cook this new formula? She doesn't know anything about cooking. Have you not seen Sandy's nightmare? Her over here sticking her hands in food and then shoving it into her friend's mouth? Oh, that's just disgusting. But with that aside, this episode was actually quite good. I do love this episode's visuals, such as the Krabby Patty zombies, Bubble Bass, Plankton, Patrick, Pepe Krabs, if you're from the Discord friend group. Shout out to Bermumsy, Motif, Luke. Yeah, you know those guys. But anyways, quite good visuals, quite good jokes, and very dark atmosphere. Krabby Patty Creature Feature is a good episode, and I recommend you guys watch it. Form your own opinions, and do not trust Sandy Cheeks to be your cook. He's gonna do something stupid like this. Teacher's Pest. Mr. Krabs and Plankton have to take boating school classes. Thankfully, SpongeBob's there to show them the ropes. Okay, Teacher's Pest was okay. And I'm gonna tell you guys why I think this episode was just okay. I do love the concept of Mr. Krabs and Plankton joining boating school together. That's really interesting. But there are some things going on that isn't that funny. Like, Plankton and Mr. Krabs fighting for the desk. I know that happens for, like a minute or so, but that's just not funny. Like, this is just childish behavior of them. Another funny moment of this episode was SpongeBob appearing in the little projector movie, and he's seen flying, and he just goes right through the screen. And the Good Noodles board from, New Student Starfish returns. And don't forget the ending where SpongeBob crashes into the boat, causing an explosion, and we got SpongeBob, Mr. Krabs, and Plankton all morphed up together. Kind of reminds me of Squidbob Tentacle Pants, and Mrs. Puff bluntly getting very angry. But overall, this episode was just okay. Nothing spectacular, but it is what it is, and that's just my formative opinions. Sanitation of Sanity. When Mr. Krabs gets in trouble for littering, he makes SpongeBob and Squidward clean up Bikini Bottom. Guys, I apologize for not having the slide for Sanitation and Sanity. It's because that I did create the slide for it, but when I was working on creating the other slides for the other episodes, I must have accidentally deleted that slide, or must have made a duplicate of it, and must have once again deleted it. So I apologize for it, so you will not be getting a creative slide for this scene. Instead, I'm just going to be talking over the title card. This episode was quite good. At first, the episode's plot was very generic. Like, I thought this was going to be a boring episode where, oh, SpongeBob and Squidward are just cleaning up Bikini Bottom, nothing funny happening. But I guess I was wrong, and I guess we were all wrong about that as well. Some of the good moments of this episode was, of course, the doll, where Squidward was inside of the garbage truck. He found this doll, and the doll said, "I want to have fun." And the doll says, I want to have good grades. And the doll said, I want to destroy you. That was just hilarious. Like, that was a really good part of the episode. And another great part of this episode was the epic climax of Patrick and SpongeBob and Squidward battling each other with robots. Like SpongeBob and Squidward turned the garbage truck into a robot. That was pretty dank. Kind of reminds me of Transformers. But with creativity like this, you can always make a good episode, and that's exactly what Sanitation of Sanity gets, a good rating. Watch this episode if you haven't seen it. It's worth your time, has lots of great humor, lots of great references such as the SpongeBob SquarePants flute nose theme song part. Watch it, form your own opinion. Thanks for tuning in. I have no clue why I said that. We're going on a bunny hunt. A sea bunny ravages Squidward's garden, but SpongeBob thinks it's cute. So yes, Bunny Hunt was actually quite entertaining in my opinion. I do love the map that I've included in the slide. It's a really good visual representation of the Bikini Bottom map. That was really good in the episode. I also loved how the sea bunny used Squidward's nose hair to strum his banjo to play Puka A. That was so clever. I never thought they would do something like that. And another moment that I loved about Bunny Hunt was SpongeBob and Patrick going back to their jellyfishing days, which we haven't seen in a very long time in the show. And I also do love the bunnies attacking Squidward's house. There's a lot of good things about this episode, and I do love the ending where it has Squidward as a rabbit running away from the animal catcher with the sunset. Season 11 has lots of sunset endings, you guys, and I will point those out if I come across one. But yeah, Bunny Hunt was quite good. Watch it, form your own opinion. And I should just stop saying that because it's gonna get annoying real quick. Squid Noir. When Squid's clarinet disappears, he has to become a hard-boiled detective to track it down. Okay, so Squid Noir has got to be one of the most creative ideas that SpongeBob SquarePants have yet to come up with. So this is all the creativity that Feral Friends brought in, My Leg, which is another episode of the season 11, and it's a really good attempt of a noir setting. So, yes, from the plot of the episode, Squidward is playing his clarinet at work. Mr. Krabs demands him to play it at home. Squidward then realizes that his house became ransacked, and it goes into a black and white setting where Squidward tells a story of how he got his clarinet back. So, it's basically Squidward becoming a detective, trying to find out who took his clarinet. So, my biggest problem with this episode was Squidward keep assuming that people has stole his clarinet. Like, he keeps pointing at SpongeBob and Patrick saying, "Where's my clarinet?" Like, instead of actually coming up with clues like a real detective, like, he just immediately assumes that SpongeBob and Patrick took his clarinet, which was quite annoying. But Bubble Bass's moments in this episode were actually quite good. Bubble Bass actually played a big role in this episode, which is quite entertaining. SpongeBob and Bubble Bass having a little duel with their little action figures was quite great. And then the ending kind of didn't make any sense because why would jellyfishes steal his clarinet? That wasn't pointed out in the episode. But overall, this episode was quite good with a little points of criticism. It was still quite an entertaining episode and worth your time. And I do wish the black and white setting was throughout the whole episode, but using it for the middle portion was quite the great way around. Scavenger Pants. Squidward sends SpongeBob and Patrick on a increasingly difficult scavenger hunt to get them out of his hair. So yeah, Squidward is getting annoyed by SpongeBob and Patrick, and then Squidward has an idea for them to go on a scavenger hunt. And boy was this episode quite good on rewatch. So if you guys can recall from my Scavenger Pants review that I did back in 2017, I gave this episode a meh because I thought it was really boring, but after going back and rewatching it, it was actually quite as funnier than I thought it would be. Moving on to the cons. Why doesn't SpongeBob has his teeth when they reanimated the shocked faces from the first film? That was their biggest mistake, and that kind of annoyed me that they forgot his front teeth. But no, that cannot be avoided. That cannot be avoided. That's a huge L that it just took, the storyboard artist is. And the ending of the episode gets the true cake. Oh, what a beautiful family. Yee. The freaking photographer just says yee, like that stupid yee meme. That was quite funny. And the amount of things that Squidward told SpongeBob and Patrick to search, such as the boxing begonia, a sandwich, Squidward's long-lost brother. That was quite funny, and I do recommend you guys watch this episode. Do it. Cuddle He Hugs. SpongeBob's new friend is a giant, fluffy hamster, but no one else is able to see him. So, how does SpongeBob meet Cuddle He Hugs, you may ask? Well, let me tell you that he eats a moldy Krabby Patty, he becomes sick, he starts hallucinating and paranoid, where he sees a giant, fluffy hamster, and nobody else sees him. That's the plot. Cuddle He Hugs is a great character. I do love his voice. His voice is really, really good. Well, I'm your new best friend. You can call me Cuddle He Hugs. We'll bring it in for the real deal. Yeah, those are some great quotes from Cuddle He Hugs himself. And I'm surprised that they brought back so many great memories of this episode, like the little park from Karate Choppers. We haven't seen that in a while. And I do wish everybody could have seen Cuddle He Hugs, but that was the point of the episode. Now, let me talk about the ending right quick. The ending made really no sense to me, because why did Cuddle He Hugs turn evil? Why? Was there like any explanation of why he's evil? Or was it just there because the writers were like, hey, let's make this character evil so we can make it more funny? No, that's not funny at the slightest, you guys. Don't just make a character evil for no reason. That just doesn't make sense to me. But overall, Cuddle He Hugs had a great concept, had some great jokes. Well, not great jokes, but okay jokes, I guess. And the ending was quite entertaining, too, to see Cuddle He Hugs in a realistic bedroom. Kind of looked like a girl's bedroom, but hey, whatever. Quite good episode, if I have to say so myself. Pat the horse. Patrick wants to be a horse. That's it. That's your plot. Wow. Was this episode fun? Really fun episode. SpongeBob reads Patrick a book about you can be anything you want to be. Patrick wants to become a horse, and that's what he gets. Great episode. Very funny episode, too. The horse race at the end was epic. Sandy's little cameos were quite funny, especially the janitor walking over her. Like, that was quite funny. And, yeah, Patrick becoming the horse was quite good. But if there was one point of criticism that I really wish this episode could have had, why wasn't there a scene of SpongeBob and Patrick riding through the sunset as a silhouette? Why couldn't they have a silhouette scene? Like, that would have been really epic if you saw Patrick riding in the desert in a silhouette form. Ugh. Those are just nitpicks that I just really wish that could have happened. But with nitpicks aside, this episode was quite good. Watch it now. Chatterbox Gary. Gary has a pet translation collar, and he's talking up a storm. Everyone loves it, except for Squidward. Okay, the reason why I give this episode a good is because that I actually did like the concept of the episode of Gary learning how to talk. And, again, there could have been some more potential there because it says that everyone loves it, but the only characters that Gary spoke to was Patrick and Sandy, not the whole Bikini Bottom. So that's kind of clickbait if you ask me. And then the rest of the episode was just Squidward basically getting annoyed by it, so he just takes the translator collar out, replaces it with his own one, and just talks over a walkie-talkie, which makes Gary says bad things, and it was good and all. Oh, excuse me. It was good and all, but it could have had more potential. So this episode just gets a low good. It gets a really low good. And that's pretty much all I have to say for Chatterbox Gary. That's pretty much it. Don't feed the clowns. When a small clown gets left behind by the circus, SpongeBob takes the helpless Harlequin under his wing. Yeah, Don't Feed the Clowns was really funny, very cartoony. The best episode of the I Heart SpongeBob week, which was from February 12th through the 16th. I could be wrong, but I could be right, but whatever. Like I said, it was very cartoony. The clown was quite humorous. SpongeBob taking him to different jobs, such as the wiener stand, the pie bakery, helping Mrs. Puff out from a burning building as a firefighter. And the ending was actually quite emotional. It was actually quite heartwarming to see SpongeBob taking the clown back to a much better place for him. And the visuals were actually really good at the ending scene. Really good visuals. Reminds me of Candyland. So overall, Don't Feed the Clowns was a quite good episode. Great humor, great visual gags, and great overall. Drive happy. SpongeBob can't drive, but he doesn't need a license to operate a self-driving car. Okay, this episode, it's really not that good. And it's really not okay. It's not meh. It's just... Okay, the reason why I call this episode bad is because that I just don't like Coop. Coop is so unlikable, I'm telling you. I do love the design of Coop. I really do. It's like one of the best looking vehicles that the show has to offer. And I do love the concept of the episode, but Coop is so unlikable. I'm too wet. I'm too cold. Like, shut up, Coop. Like, seriously. And then all it was just Coop being an idiot, SpongeBob saying, I want to go to work. And then, with alongside of good jokes with Squidward, taking out his brain and erasing it, that was funny. And Patrick was just there to be stupid. And I'm not gonna lie, the ending climax was actually quite entertaining to see SpongeBob using a steering wheel to operate Coop. But still, Coop is another one of those characters who just randomly turned evil, just like Cuddle He Hugs. Like, quit with that story element, Nickelodeon. Stop making a character nice and then make him evil for no reason. Like, you're not gonna get a laugh out of me from that. So, this episode wasn't anything special, it's just bad. I just didn't really like this episode that much. I just really didn't. And this is the only bad episode of the season, you guys, because I actually did find the other episodes to be quite enjoyable, but this one, not too much. Not too much. Old Man Patrick. Patrick thinks he's an old man, so it's up to SpongeBob to remind him how much fun being a child can be. Okay, on first watch, this episode was quite meh, but then rewatching it, I actually thought it was quite good, but it isn't anything too special though. So, what I really didn't like about Old Man Patrick that much on first watch is how weird it was. Like, at the beginning of the episode, SpongeBob and Patrick were playing Marco Polo at the swimming pool, and that's like the running gag of the episode of this Italian fish named Marco, and he was actually played by Tom Kenny if you look it up on the ESB website. But yeah, so when Patrick goes to the retirement home, when he heard that they were selling prune ice cream at Shady Shoals retirement home, he goes there, spends too much time at the retirement home, and then he turns into an old man. That's literally what happens. Alright, with that said, now moving on to the good parts. Bunny Buns from Midlife Crustacean. I'm so glad that place came back. Great to see it again. But sadly, the accordion banana... banana? What am I even saying? The accordion bunny, the bunny on the accordion that Mr. Krabs punched, and Midlife Crustacean doesn't return in this episode. And I actually do like the animatronics there. That was kind of remind me of Five Nights at Freddy's. Yes, I'm saying Five Nights at Freddy's because that's what it reminds me of. But yeah, alongside of some really funny things here and there, the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song reference was actually quite good. This episode is just a low good. Nothing too special. Really not that special, but it was quite good overall after rewatching it. Fun-sized friends. SpongeBob and Patrick exchange tiny living versions of themselves. Wow, was this episode quite fun? I actually loved Fun-sized friends. I do love the SpongeBob and Patrick miniatures. They were quite cute and entertaining. My favorite one was Patrick, of course, because Patrick, he was the quite funniest one. And it turned out to be that SpongeBob and Patrick, the miniature versions of themselves, aren't appreciating the way how they're being treated, so they decide to get payback. And that's where they do like a little Gulliver Travels reference where SpongeBob and Patrick are tied to the ground. And no, I'm not going to mention any quotes. You know, I'll go ahead and mention this one quote. Patrick said something about the secret formula, and someone was like, that's Plankton. And yeah, that was quite funny. And then the ending, I'm sorry, they should have ended the episode where SpongeBob and Patrick gives them the little miniature houses of themselves to the miniature SpongeBob and Patrick, and that's how the episode should have ended. But no, they just added filler to add up to the 11-minute time mark. But that ending part really wasn't that necessary, but I'm not going to complain about that too much, but overall, this episode was quite good in my opinion. Grandmom's the word. Plankton tells his grandma that he owns the Krusty Krab but must keep the lie going when she comes to visit. Sorry. So, Grandmom's the word was just okay. There were filler in it, such as SpongeBob flipping the sign around. That was pretty much filler. But Ray, he was quite funny, which is basically Plankton trying to entertain Karen. I'm assuming that's an adult joke because you got Plankton and Karen in the bathtub together, and that's kind of adult humor there. But what makes this episode is okay is because there really wasn't anything special going on. But Plankton's grandmother does have a crush on Squidward for some strange reason, and then Grandma Plankton steals the formula, returns back to Shady Show's retirement home, sleeping with the bottle and on the couch or the sofa. But yeah, it was just okay. Nothing too special. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Doodle Dimension. SpongeBob and Patrick become trapped in an alternate dimension where anything they draw comes to life. So I'm guessing it's supposed to be a sequel or a prequel to Frankendoodle from season 2. And this episode was actually quite good. I'm not gonna lie, this episode was actually not bad in my opinion. But the beginning was just filler. If it wasn't for that long beginning, this episode could have had a much better start, but the start at the beginning wasn't anything too special. It was just Sandy showing SpongeBob and Patrick the little dimension, and we got that nice little cameo of Vincent Waller over there on the rocking chair. Dag nabbit, that nut-stealing arm is back again. You gotta love Vincent Waller's nice Texas accent, because he is from Texas, if you guys didn't know that. Doodlebot returns. Of course, yeah, Doodlebot returns, and I guess that was the highlight, where he just kidnaps Patrick and then they create a Doodle army. You got Doodle Squidward, Doodle Gary, Doodle Krabs, Doodle Sandy, which looks ugly. But overall, Doodle Dimension was just a quite good of an episode in my opinion. Moving Bubble Bass. SpongeBob and Patrick helps Bubble Bass move out of his mother's basement. Holy moly, this episode was quite the entertainment. Bubble Bass is a blessed character. Holy crap, this episode was so good. I love how the episode begins with Bubble Bass having his little imaginary talk show, and that was actually quite funny. And he was actually talking with a Krabby Patty. And so yeah, Bubble Bass is moving out of his mother's basement, so SpongeBob and Patrick helps out. And if they actually help out, they will get free lunch from him. But it turned out to be that Bubble Bass ate the free lunch. Patrick gets very angry and he says, "If my friend SpongeBob doesn't get his free lunch, things are gonna get crazy." And that was Bill Fagerbakke doing that. That was quite funny. And yeah, and then Mama Bass, Bubble Bass's mom, wasn't that ugly. I was afraid they were gonna make her really ugly, but that wasn't the case. And I actually appreciate them making Mama Bass not too ugly. So overall, this episode was quite good, hilarious. Watch it, form your own opinion. So yeah, high sea diving. SpongeBob wants to be the first sponge that dives to the surface of the ocean. So this episode was actually quite a good one, and even though this isn't the first time SpongeBob has reached to the surface, because we have seen lots of episodes that has characters going up to the surface, such as Pressure, the second SpongeBob movie, but the way how this was portrayed was actually quite interesting. Is because that when SpongeBob went to the surface, it was actually filled with trash, and it kind of reminded me of Sanitation and Sanity a little bit, because that episode alone has to deal with trash. And then when SpongeBob arrived to the surface of Bikini Bottom, he found Old Man Jenkins, and him and SpongeBob decided to play a game of Poseidon and King Neptune and whatnot. And this actually led up to the ending of the episode where King Neptune showed up and he actually zapped Old Man Jenkins with his trident. And that was actually a quite interesting return of King Neptune. And yeah, so this episode actually did have some really good visuals and some really good moments in it. So that's why I gave this one a good. It was quite interesting. And one thing that I really didn't like about this episode was the fact that Sandy came out of nowhere just to tell SpongeBob that if he wanted to go up to the surface, he needed anti-gravity. And that was basically it. And then she didn't appear anywhere else in the episode. And that's one thing that I just been realizing in season 11, that Sandy's just showing up for these one screen times and that's it. But overall, that's my opinions on High Sea Diving. It was a pretty good episode, and I do recommend you guys take a look at it. Bottle Burglars. SpongeBob and Squidward accidentally let Plankton slip away with the formula, and it's up to them to retrieve it. So yeah, this episode was actually quite good. So just from the plot alone, Squidward has accidentally threw the formula away as trash, and so they have to go to the chum bucket to retrieve it back. And this episode had some of its really good highlights, such as the amount of Easter eggs that this episode provided. One of the Easter eggs was the date and the month and the year of when SpongeBob aired on TV, May 1st, 1999. There was another Easter egg where it had a Doodle Bob underneath the desk where Squidward pushed a button to retrieve the security footage. Another good moment was Bubble Bass eating the Krabby Patty from the security camera, and Mr. Krabs getting angry at SpongeBob and Squidward for letting Plankton get away with the formula. So yeah, this episode was actually quite good. And yeah, so that's pretty much all I have to say for Bottle Burglars. It's a recommended watch. And I can tell that you guys might get an enjoyment from this. My leg. Once Fred's leg heals up, SpongeBob is determined to keep it out of harm's way. So this is actually one of the most creative episodes that SpongeBob SquarePants has had to offer, taking one of Fred's catchphrases, my leg, and turning it to the next level. So if you guys didn't know that at the beginning of this episode, it actually showed a reanimated footage of the boating school episode where the lighthouse had landed on Fred's leg, and that's basically how the whole gag started out. Fred was just randomly at the boating school, and then the lighthouse had fell over his legs, crushing it, causing him to say his signature catchphrase. So this whole episode was just basically a whole bunch of characters screaming my leg, and it was actually quite entertaining. And if I had to point out one of my favorites from the my leg gags, has to be the one with the silent film. That one was quite entertaining. And the My Leg Is in Love song sung by Fred was actually great as well. In fact, the part where Patrick, the two guys, and Fred playing the piano with his legs kind of reminds me of the Family Guy intro. That's kind of what it reminds me of. But overall, this was a quite funny, entertaining episode, and I highly recommend you guys watch this one. Ink Lemonade. Patrick's lemonade stand is unsuccessful until he gets a secret ingredient from Squidward. So, Ink Lemonade was basically a Squidward torture episode where Patrick tries to scare him for him to squirt ink into glasses and defeat it to people. And that's basically what this whole episode is. In fact, this episode has claimed to be the worst out of SpongeBob SquarePants. And I kind of disagree with that, is because that when I first saw this episode, I just thought it was okay. It wasn't anything too special. Yes, I do agree that Patrick scaring Squidward for no reason was kind of unnecessary. And I wish this episode had a much better plot. Like, I don't know, Patrick and Squidward competing with each other to see who could sell the best lemonade. And that could have been the plot here, but nope, that wasn't the case. And from the execution of this episode, it reminds me of Patrick the Game, where the whole plot in that episode is that Patrick just makes a game for his friends to play it, but it didn't turn out to be a reality. Like, it could have been better if Patrick tried to sell his game and he became popular from it, but no, that's how it is with Ink Lemonade. They just make a unique concept, but they don't use it to the best way, so this is what the results that we got. So overall, Ink Lemonade isn't anything too bad, but it's just okay, and I do wish the plot was a lot better. Mustard O' Mine. When the Krusty Krab runs out of mustard, Mr. Krabs sends SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward to dig up some more. So yeah, Mustard O' Mine actually has a very basic plot, and the whole execution turned out to be really great. I do love the shenanigans of SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward down in the mines collecting the mustard. I actually like the whole gag where Patrick thought the ketchup was blood. Well, he digged up ketchup and he thought it was blood at first, and I thought that was actually a really clever joke. The hillbilly guy, the farmer hillbilly dude, he was quite entertaining. And the whole ending of the episode where the mine was about to explode and then the mustard just shot from underground and went through the rooftop of the Krusty Krab, that was actually a really good ending. So yeah, that was my honest opinions on Mustard O' Mine. It was a quite interesting episode, and it was well executed. Shopping list. SpongeBob and Sandy have to collect Krabby Patty ingredients, but Plankton follows their every step. And yes, this episode was another good one in my opinion. So a lot of Easter eggs was brought here, such as Pinhead Larry and the Dirty Dan tombstones from Survival of the Idiots, and the whole gag of Mr. Krabs' little money dollar with the bikini. That was quite funny as well. And I actually do love the many locations that this episode provided where SpongeBob and Sandy was collecting these ingredients, such as hair from a Yeti crab, milk from a giant fang-tooth fish, and getting dandruff from the Flying Dutchman. And Plankton, he actually had some good lines here and there, and my favorite part of the episode is, you guys can see from the image in this slide screenshot, is him with the giant hands. That was really funny. But then it all turned out that Mr. Krabs has gotten all the ingredients, and then Sandy just beats him up. And that's one thing I just don't like about Sandy, is because she has no rights to beat up people just because it's just not right. You don't beat people up because they done something wrong. You just talk to them out and tell them not to do it again, you know? But overall, Shopping List, in my opinion, was quite good. I've heard from other people that they thought the episode was slightly boring on rewatch, but that's their opinions, and I'm not going to agree with them. It's because that it's just their opinions, and I have way different opinions than them. So overall, Shopping List was a good episode. Whale watching, Mr. Krabs hires Squidward to babysit Pearl for the night, but she just wants to sneak out to a cool teen party. So yeah, this episode was another good one in my opinion. So I'm gonna go ahead and talk about some of my favorite moments of this episode. I really do love the stop motion segment towards the end where Pearl got shot into Bikini Atoll's while she was at the teen party. And by the way, I actually got a comment from one of my subscribers. Well, I don't think it was one of my subscribers, but they stated that the stop motion was done by Social Novelties, which you guys didn't know were the guys who did It's a SpongeBob Christmas and The Legend of Bikini Bottom. So big shout outs to Social Novelties for creating the stop motion segment. And yeah, I actually did like the concept of Squidward babysitting Pearl instead of SpongeBob, because SpongeBob was in this episode, but only as a small cameo, and if Squidward didn't take care of Pearl, Mr. Krabs will have to give Squidward a shift with SpongeBob for the Krusty Krab, basically. And that's how the whole episode was executed, and it was well executed as well. So overall, whale watching was a good episode, and I highly recommend you guys watch this one. Krusty Cleaners. After spilling a milkshake during a delivery, SpongeBob vows to return and clean the entire building. Oh my gosh, Krusty Cleaners was such an amazing watch, and I cannot believe that this episode had so many good things about it. Right on ahead, the climax was obviously the best part of the episode, where this robot is determining that he could be the only one to clean up the whole building, but SpongeBob refuses to let him do that, so he hires a whole bunch of army appliances to take care of SpongeBob and Patrick while they are trying to clean the apartment or the building. So yeah, that was actually one of the good highlights of the episode. And then the whole ending with SpongeBob and Patrick with the tank, that was absolutely amazing. And yes, this episode was really, really entertaining, and I'm glad that Old Hilo March played in the title card for this episode. And if you guys didn't know, that Old Hilo March is actually one of my favorite tracks. It's very, very catchy and upbeat. So overall, Krusty Cleaners is an amazing watch. At Pinocchio, Plankton tells Patrick he is his conscience so he can convince the wooden head star to steal him a Krabby Patty. So take Pinocchio and SpongeBob, and this is what you get. Very, very creative and well executed episode. Pat Pinocchio is one of my favorite season 11 episodes, and it's really good with the humor and flashbacks that it provides. Goofy Goober Party Boat from the first SpongeBob film returns in this episode, and it's actually a quite good of a return because we haven't seen a Goofy Goober Party Boat since the first SpongeBob film. And I do love the concept of this episode taking place in the storybook, because I predicted that back when this episode was already confirmed by Vincent Waller himself. Another one of my favorite moments in this episode was Patrick and Plankton and Pearl's body, where they met Gelato and his little wooden puppet, and they played like jump rope inside of the body of Pearl's body, and they were fighting each other inside of Pearl's body. That was really funny, and I do love this screenshot that I have of the Goofy Goober employee with his eyes in flames with 2 ice cream cones in his eyes. That was actually really funny, and this episode is quite your catch if you love Pinocchio and SpongeBob SquarePants. This is a good episode, and I highly recommend you guys see it if you haven't just yet. Chef Bob. When Mr. Krabs puts in an open kitchen, SpongeBob gets stage fright and has to invent a new persona. So originally, I thought this episode was about SpongeBob cooking a dish or a special recipe, and he decides to sell it to everyone, but that wasn't the case. Instead, it's about a paper brown hand puppet created by SpongeBob named Chef Bob. And Chef Bob is actually the villain of this episode because his jokes are offensive to people, and he starts insulting customers, and he then tries to attack his creator, which is SpongeBob. Hilarious things going on in this episode, such as the "Shut up, Fred" from Mr. Krabs when Fred screams "my leg," and this wonderful crotch shot of Mr. Krabs that I got from the SpongeBob Captures website. And yeah, Chef Bob was a really fun episode, highly entertaining, and quite the laughs. Plankton Paranoia. Plankton hasn't tried to steal the secret formula in a while, and that's making Mr. Krabs nervous. Wow, was this episode really good? If you guys didn't recall from my Plankton Paranoia review, this has to be one of my favorite episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants in general. I do love the dark atmosphere of Plankton paranoying Mr. Krabs, because Mr. Krabs thinks that Plankton is trying to steal his formula, and that isn't the case actually. In fact, Mr. Krabs is so paranoid, he is actually kicking everybody out of his restaurant, and then one day that night, he's in the Krusty Krab, and then he starts seeing Plankton everywhere, and that's where his paranoia starts to begin. One of my favorite moments was Sandy approaching the restaurant asking for a Krabby Patty, and Mr. Krabs just stamps her with the word "banned." That was so funny, and I really loved that joke a lot. And then the ending of this episode was the true highlight. So it turned out to be that it was the anniversary of the day when Plankton tried to steal Mr. Krabs' formula, and then Mr. Krabs then realized that SpongeBob wasn't really working for Plankton. They give each other a hug, everyone's about to eat their Krabby Patties. Mr. Krabs then notices that he has put fireworks, bombs, and lots of deadly explosives in the Krabby Patties, takes him away from everyone. He then blows up into a firework, which gave me memories back to playing Super Mario Odyssey and Super Mario 3D World. If you guys didn't know, those games had fireworks where it had the characters' faces in them, which what the fireworks scene in Plankton Paranoia reminded me of. And that overall was the good way to end off this amazing episode. Plankton Paranoia is very dark, very energetic, has great visuals, has great humor, great overall. I highly recommend you guys watch this episode if you haven't, and I know I've been saying that throughout this entire review of Season 11, but seriously, these episodes are worth the watch. Library cards. When Patrick discovers the Pineapple's library, SpongeBob introduces him to the wonderful world of book learning. Man, okay, so library cards, it was a quite good of an episode, but it wasn't anything too special or whatnot. So Patrick watches a TV show named The Sir Urchin and Snail Fail Show, where he then discovers SpongeBob's library. He then reads all the books in the library, he becomes too smart, and SpongeBob has to come up with ways to make him not smart again. It's basically Patrick Smart Pants 2.0 in a way, and it could have had more potential and all, but it was a good episode, like I said earlier, but it wasn't anything too groundbreaking, so I'm gonna just give this episode a low good, and that's all I have to say for library cards. Nothing too great, nothing too spectacular, but it's nothing too offensive. Call the cops. Plankton goes to jail, but the secret formula is taken as evidence, so SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs plot to get it back. Okay, this episode was quite the snooze fest. My biggest issue with this episode was Patrick. Patrick had no reasons being here just to be dumb in the prison. And yeah, so another thing that I also didn't like about this episode was SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs just throwing people in jail for no reason. I mean, I guess there's a reason for these people to be thrown in jail, but it's been done too many times where characters plays as cops and they just throw people in jail for no reason. But with all the bad things aside, the only good things that I can say about this episode was the cameo Easter egg picture of the Tattletale Strangler from SpongeBob Meets the Strangler, and that's all I have to say good about Call the Cops. It was a snooze fest, and it was just okay. Nothing spectacular whatsoever. Surf and Turf. Sandy struggles to build a ship in a bottle before a big contest, so SpongeBob calls in a little extra help. Woo! This episode was so funny. I actually did like Surf and Turf. On my first watch on this episode, you guys could not tell that I was laughing up a storm when I was watching this episode. Sandy, oh my goodness, she was the highlight of this episode of how dumb she is. Like, every time Mr. Krabs tried to teach her how to make a perfect bottle for the ship, Mr. Krabs keeps smashing it, and then Sandy gotten very angry at it. Like, that was the highlight of the episode, was Mr. Krabs smashing the bottles, Sandy being dumb by eating all of the furniture in her tree dome. And if you guys didn't recall from the beginning of this episode, Sandy, why do you have a grill in your house? Grills are supposed to be outside, not inside. You see, this is why Sandy's not smart. But anyways, with that all aside, this episode was really fun, really enjoyable, had some great laughs in it. I'm not going to go way into details just because that I just don't want to, and that'll just make the review even longer, but just watch this episode, watch it. It's really worth your time, and it's really funny. Goons on the Moon. Sandy takes her science scout trip on a trip to the moon. And yes, this episode was actually really good in my opinion. So before I go ahead to talk about the pros right quick, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the cons real fast. Squidina, the new character in this episode, she isn't anything too special. I think she was just one-dimensional in my opinion. She's supposed to be like a nerd character, and she's actually one of Pearl's friends from school. She wasn't anything too special, and that's all I have to say about Goons on the Moon and Squidina not being a very good character. So without all the cons aside, let's talk about the pros of this episode. The Roger Bumpus cameo was actually quite entertaining and laughably good. Another funny moment from this episode is when Squidward landed on the moon, he scrunched up, which was another funny thing. And Sandy getting angry once again. I just love it how in these later episodes of season 11, they just made Sandy very angry, which had me laughing up a storm because I like to see Sandy angry because it's very funny. But overall, Goons on the Moon was quite the great episode. And yes, it's supposed to be the Christmas, quote-unquote, Christmas special. Nickelodeon was teasing this as Mary Bob's Space Pants, which was kind of clickbait. But Santa Claus only appeared like towards the ending of the episode, so that was kind of false advertising. But overall, Goons on the Moon, in my opinion, was a good episode. Appointment TV. The long-lost episode of Mermaid Man is finally showing on TV, but SpongeBob may not make it home in time to watch it. So, this episode, take Best Day Ever and a few other episodes and scrunch it up, and this is what you get. Appointment TV, in my opinion, isn't that offensive. It was actually quite good when I saw it, because I did love the ending of the episode where Sandy invited everybody to reenact the Mermaid and Barnacle Boy episode, or Mermaid Man episode, just because SpongeBob didn't got a chance to see it, because he was too busy helping out his friends, and his friends never gave him the proper thank you, so this is what they did to thank him for all the good things he did. And it was actually quite entertaining in my opinion, but it was kind of disappointing to see that Sandy, even though she's dressed up as Miss Appear from Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5, she didn't have that much of a big role. And also Captain Tightwad and Dr. Negative from Mermaid Pants was also in this episode, and that was actually okay, I guess, but it would have been better if they had Captain Magma, the Elastic Waistband from Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5, but overall, this episode was just good. I will give it a low good. It's because that is nothing too special of the season, but it was quite enjoyable. And I'm gonna go ahead and leave off this review with this very, very good quote from the episode. "What are you kids doing in the outdoor amphitheater?" Karen's virus. Karen gets a computer virus and it's up to SpongeBob to get it out of her. Okay, you guys, before I go any further, out of all the episodes that has great references from past episodes, there's no doubt about it. This is the best one. Has to be the best one. So, with that aside, so from the plot, it suggests as Karen gets a virus, Plankton suggests that SpongeBob should go inside of Karen to get the virus out of her, and it was actually a really good execution of it. So, my only small nitpick of criticism of Karen's virus was the whole 2D character designs and the 3D CGI Karen's body, inside of Karen's body. So, that was the only small thing that I wish that they could have fixed, but that wasn't anything too offensive. But now moving on to the best part of the episode, I'm gonna go ahead and just go to the climax of the episode and tell you guys why this is epic. So when SpongeBob arrived in Karen's memory bank, they had actual footage of past SpongeBob episodes such as Plankton, Fun, I think another episode on there was Single Cell Anniversary, Enemy-in-Law, I believe, but that was actually the best part of the episode, and SpongeBob battling out the virus inside of Karen's memory bank, where he was basically eating all the memories. And another thing that I want to point out is that kind of reminded me of the ending of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared 6, where the red guy was controlling the machine, and they had footage of past Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared videos from the series, and that's what the memory bank of Karen's virus reminded me of. But overall, quite a good episode, and very entertaining. The grill is gone. When a gang of kids steal the Krusty Krab's grill, SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs go to extreme lengths to win it back. So yeah, these kids steal the Krusty Krab grill, Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob finds the kids, and then the kids determines that if they want to win it back, they must complete a race at Murder Hill. And it was actually quite good, in my opinion. It was actually a really quite interesting episode where these kids actually wants to race SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs in order to win the grill back. And it was actually a quite entertaining race as well, and very funny at that. And the whole ending of the episode was quite creative, where the kid takes the Krusty Krab and rolls it down a hill, and that was actually the great execution of this episode. It gets a low good. It wasn't anything too special, but it was still fun though. The night patty. SpongeBob helps out the Krusty Krab's night shift crew, but the customers crave something creepier than usual. This episode was actually very good. The opening segment was actually quite highly entertaining, where SpongeBob and Patrick were enjoying a nice day of Glove World at night, where it was closing time, and they just kicked them right out of the amusement park, and they were wondering what they could eat. So Patrick then points out that they could go to the Krusty Krab, but SpongeBob just realizes that the Krusty Krab usually don't open during night hours. So when they arrive in the Krusty Krab, they see all of these creepy, crawly Halloween figures in the restaurant enjoying their night patties, where they see a female Squidward lookalike, who was one of my favorite characters in this episode, and the return of Nosferatu from Graveyard Shift. Very creepy, very fun, amazing references. The night patty is sure the episode that will give you a scary good time. Good episode. Bubbletown. SpongeBob visits his old friend Bubble Buddy in his hometown, Bubbletown. Okay, the reason why this episode is meh, in my opinion, is because that there's a lot of repetitive jokes that just didn't seem funny to me, such as SpongeBob popping all of the bubbles in Bubbletown, SpongeBob constantly crying over the fact that he keeps screwing everything up, and Mr. Krabs it's just too repetitive, and none of the jokes land, in my opinion, and it could have been a lot better if there was not that much repetition here, but it's just meh, very boring, and I just wish that the whole episode was much better executed, but that's just how it is, and I'm just gonna accept it as a mess. So moving on. Girls' Night Out. Sandy wants to spend a night in the city with Karen and Mrs. Puff so the ladies can let off some steam. This episode had a really good concept and a really good wave potential, but all that potential went down the drain because Vincent Waller and the crew does not know what the term Girls' Night Out means. Girls' Night Out doesn't mean you just got them doing one thing, such as enjoying milkshakes at a cafe, and then just doing the whole rest of the episode of them just pulling pranks. If you guys didn't recall that in my Girls' Night Out review, I wish they could have done something better, like the cafe thing was okay, they should have went like miniature golfing or going to the movies or going to the mall. That's what Girls' Night Out basically sounds like to me, not them pulling pranks, because that's not what adults do. Well, quote-unquote adults, because Sandy sure ain't one, because she's borderline dumb. But overall, Gal Pals was a dumb quote. Some of the pranks were okay, like the VR prank that Sandy did. That was actually a really creative prank. But it could have been a lot better, you know? So overall, this episode is just okay. Okay, that's all I'm gonna give it. Squirrel Jelly. SpongeBob and Patrick have their peaceful day of jellyfishing disturbed by Sandy's competitive nature. Okay, you guys, this was actually not a bad episode in my opinion. This was actually one of Sandy's better roles in SpongeBob. In fact, I actually really did like what they did for Sandy in this episode. Well, in the climax part, not the beginning part, because Sandy kind of was being way too competitive. But I actually did like the fact that they turned Sandy into like a Buddhist or something. I was not expecting that from the show, but that's how it turned out to be, you know? And it was actually quite entertaining. The visuals, such as jellyfish fields turned into flames because of Sandy's competitive nature with jellyfishing, was actually quite nice to see, and Sandy competing in all these great sports such as basketball, hot dog eating, volleyball, very competitive nature, and I do wish Sandy was a little bit likable here, but that's her character. She's very competitive, and she likes sports, and that's kind of understandable, and that's actually going back to Sandy's character roots. So overall, Squirrel Jelly was a good episode, and that's all I have to say. Okay, boys, we've made it to the last episode of Season 11, The String. SpongeBob pulls from Squidward's shirt a loose string that never seems to end. What a creative episode! This is almost just like the paper. In the paper, SpongeBob had creative ways to play with a piece of paper, which ended up making the episode really good, and then the string takes the concept of the paper to extend it even further. So, SpongeBob finds a loose string on Squidward's shirt to find out where it ends, because he doesn't know where it ends, and it actually leads up to really creative things, such as SpongeBob pulling the Milky Way, SpongeBob pulling the strings out of the Krusty Krab sign, and it turns out to be that Patrick was the one who was having the string at the end all along. So it was actually a great way to end off the 11th season of SpongeBob, and it was actually a really good ending as well. So this episode gets a good in my opinion. The only things that I really didn't like about the string was the whole naked gag with Squidward, but overall, the episode ended up being really creative and really fun. Okay, everyone, those are all of the episodes of Season 11, and here are the ratings total. So far, I've calculated 37 good episodes, 7 okay episodes, 4 meh episodes, and 1 bad episode. So overall, Season 11 was a pretty decent season, way better than Season 10 in my opinion, and that's all I have to say for SpongeBob SquarePants Season 11. Thank you guys for watching. Tune in next time for more SpongeBob reviews for Season 12, and I'll see you guys next time with more videos. Bye!